some people that are going to spend more time being angry about it than making a decision in what they need to do for their health of their business.
Hi, and welcome to another discussion on law firm and finance. Now, one of the topics that is really coming a very big deal, especially for Clio users, is that the relationship between LawPay and Clio is ending. They are technologically breaking up because people are benefiting from having their LawPay data automatically load into Clio. After August 31st, that is no longer going to be the case. So, I brought on an expert at Clio to come on, and we're going to talk about this situation, and we're going to also talk about what are some things people could be doing and changes they can make so that they are not negatively impacted by this. So, Corinne Rodgers, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm really good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It is always a pleasure for us to be able to connect from seeing each other at the Clio conference, at the ABA Tech show. So I'm always glad to catch up with you.
So am I. And yeah, Clio is coming up right around the corner in October. I'll be there.
Awesome. Awesome. So now with this topic, I think this is a very interesting topic. And so I'm looking forward to jumping into your perspective on the LawPay Clio breakup. But for the people who haven't had the privilege of meeting you and getting to know you like I do, can you tell a little bit about your background and your business?
Sure. I'm Corinne Rodgers. I'm the founder of Simple Smart Solo. We squeeze stress into success for small law firms. So, what we actually do is leverage Clio, both Clio Grow, Clio Manage, and Clio products. We help law firms actually use more of that product than they probably already are, because frankly, they pay the whole bill every year or every month. So, let's see if we can get more out of it.
Yeah, and I will say is Clio is not an inexpensive practice management tool. And I think part of it is because it has so many features. So when I see people not really utilizing it, or there was a firm that I was working with and they're on an annual contract and their annual, say, $20,000 bill came up to where I'm just like, all right, let's make sure we are putting this tool to use to really help us grow the firm. So I'm curious for you is how did you get so involved with really becoming a Clio expert?
Oh, that's such a great question. Sometimes I ask myself the same thing. I don't even know sometimes how I got here, but here's how I really got here. I had the opportunity to work in a law firm and implement Clio for that law firm many years ago. And I learned a lot about Clio then. And then I had another opportunity to work with a fabulous Clio consultant, and I became a certified Clio consultant myself. And I went on the journey of rolling up my sleeves and finding out that what I thought I knew about Clio I knew 1/10 about Clio, and much to the surprise of that consultant that hired me, because she probably was worried that she made a really bad hire. But the good news was I went on a really steep learning curve journey and I learned a lot really fast. And then I realized how many law firms were missing out on how much Clio has to offer. And I can't really blame them. It's just because these things take time. And when you're a small law firm owner, like many people that are watching right now, you're wearing a lot of hats, right? Many of these law firm owners haven't met a person like you. They've certainly often have never met a person like me. I do get asked a lot. I didn't know where to find you, but I'm so glad that I did. And the same thing for bookkeeping and CFO services. They say, I didn't know that this kind of thing existed. And wow, what a gift. What a load off my back. I'm so happy that I have these fractional things. Yeah, I've gone through years of training. I think I'm on year 12. I love it. I go to CleoCon every year. I spoke at CleoCon last year. That was such a ride. I hope I get to do it again. But I encourage people to take a look at the things that you're truly investing in. I know you mentioned that Clio's not inexpensive, but what if we look at it like it's an investment and we really make sure that we're getting return on investment, ROI out of it, right? So that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help people get more out of Clio Grow. Let's make that intake robust. Let's get more out of workflow, Clio Manage. Let's make sure we know how to track time and get billing out the door. Let's get more out of Clio so you can provide much greater value to your clients.
I think that's a really good perspective because and I intentionally use the word inexpensive because I do often talk to clients from a finance standpoint of we have to look at the ROI on things, or sometimes people say, oh, that costs too much money. I was like, it depends. What's the ROI? Because if I'm paying money for something, if I pay $10 for something, but it helps me generate $15 versus if I pay $5 for something and it makes me no money, my perspective of, hey, ROI changes the scenario. And I think about the same thing as what you said with Clio is, yes, it is not inexpensive, but I do think when used properly, you can really see a positive ROI if you implement and execute and use it properly. So I'm curious for you when you think about some of the other practice management tools, because Clio's not the only one in the game. Have there been something unique about Clio that really excited you to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to continue going down this path of really helping more and more people with this specific platform?
Yeah. So I always say, because someone taught me this, the best practice management system is the one you actually use. So for anybody that's watching that says, oh gosh, here she goes on her Clio rant again, trying to persuade all of us to come to Clio. Uh, Look, if you're happy with your practice management system, and you're using it and the team is using it, then that's great. You can stay there. It's just that Clio is what I became well versed in. And I believe in doing for me and my business, I can do one thing really well. That's my philosophy on where I am now with Simple Smart Solo. So there are really great programs out there. You have to do what works for you. Now, if you want to know why I love Clio, okay, my three top things: one, it's cloud based. You can be on an airplane, in an airport, on vacation. I know we shouldn't be working on vacation, but okay. You can be anywhere that has internet access and you can get onto Clio. So you don't have to have a VPN. You don't have to have a special setup. It's web based. Great. Okay. The second reason I love Clio, let's talk dollars. They got a ton of money behind them. They're all over LinkedIn. You can Google right now, go see, hey, how much is Clio valued at? Reoccurring revenue for Clio in 2026 just hit 500 million. That's a B, like boy, billion. Okay. They just hit 500 million reoccurring revenue. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're not going anywhere. Back in 2014, when I entered the legal space, there were pop-ups, startups, spin-ups, whatever you want to call them, popping up and then disappearing 2 years later. And there, some law firms went on some wild rides with some tech. I even went on a couple wild rides. No big deal. We all survived, right? But that stuff gets frustrating. So I love that it's cloud-based. I love that it's growing. I go to a meeting about every other month for channel partners. Those are people that are certified consultants that work with Clio. And we find out about all the new things that they're coming out with. And let me tell you, what you're about to see in the next 3 months, hold on, because it's so cool. It's coming. More cool stuff is coming. So I love that they're constantly reinvesting. And then finally, I don't know, a third thing, I could probably think of 10, but a third thing is just how progressive they are with the tools that your staff are probably already machine learning. So, for example, we all know how to use these smartphones, right? Here's one right here. I use this thing everywhere. I don't even carry a wallet. I went to the grocery store today and I left my wallet in the car on purpose. And I use this to pay and do everything in the store. And Clio's leaning into that. So they're saying, hey, what are the tools that you're using every day? Your iPad, your tablet, your smartphone. Let's make us there so that you're sitting there with the client and they say, hey, I'm ready to pay into my trust, or I could pay a bill, or you need to look up their notes. You can do that on the Clio app. So it's portability, right? And then portability with security. They have really great security, two-factor authentication, multi-factor. I just love it all. So those are like my top three.
Awesome. I do think I want to highlight one of those ones that you talked about was the second one, because I think that's a really good point about the amount of investment that they have in their organization I think it does make a big difference because there are so many changes that are happening in the industry. So many companies are trying to invest in enhancing their technology. And I've seen and talked to different software companies where they didn't have the money to invest, so they couldn't evolve their tool. So they either ended up having to shut it down, or they had to try to get acquired from someone else, or they had to really go in a very tight niche because they couldn't invest at a broader scale. And I think even on the accounting side, I think it was like maybe a year ago where there were some law firms that I know and a lot of businesses that were using a online accounting software. And they log in one day and it was like December 13th. They log in and they get a message that says, "We have suspended service. The company is shutting down." So it's like immediately, like we started getting calls from law firms of, "Hey, I know we said we were good on our accounting, but our accounting software just shut down and we got 2 weeks to get our data before their servers completely shut down forever." And so I think it was a matter of that company didn't have enough financing to really invest in where they needed to take the company. So I think that's a brilliant point. And also, as we think about that investment, one of the things that we've seen Clio doing is Clio looking at, hey, what are all the use cases and all the scenarios that a law firm needs a solid practice management tool? And one of those areas has been payments. And Clio's been talking about Clio Payments for some time, but this year they're making a very strong move of just saying, hey, we're no longer going to be automatically importing LawPay payments into Clio. So, can you tell me what were your thoughts when you saw this come out?
Oof. Okay. So August 31st is the deadline. I can't say it enough. I even keep checking it to make sure that my facts are right. But yeah, the integration between LawPay and Clio, just the integration is sunsetting August 31st. As far as what my thoughts were when I saw this come out, I'm not shocked. And it makes sense. You've got a robust program, Clio, that your team, your staff, or just you as a solo live inside. Why would you go outside of the bubble, wasting valuable minutes, because it's minutes ticking, right? This is a non billable activity. So let me walk you through. I'm a solo attorney or a solo staff. Let's say I have 50 matters. Let's say I'm flat fee or hourly. We'll leave my contingent friends out. Okay. There's money going back and forth. I have to collect that money. And ideally, I'm tracking it somewhere on an invoice and I'm tracking it in Clio. That's the example I'm giving. So there's a matter in Clio, there's an invoice in Clio. The invoice is $5,000. If I'm using the LawPay integration, the hook is that when the invoice goes out, if the invoice is integrated into LawPay, when the individual receives the invoice, they pay in LawPay. That money flows into Clio and it goes against the invoice through whatever that integration does. On August 31st, that's going to go away. So that means your team member, or worse, you, the very valuable number one attorney in the firm that's probably worth $400 an hour, has to stop what they're doing and manually enter that information against the invoice. So here's what's going to happen. The attorney that's worth $400 an hour needs to do billable work. And they're going to be like, okay, look, I got paid. I didn't have time to marry it to the invoice. I'll do it later. I'll do it later. What's the most valuable thing? What's the greatest value of their time? Billable work, not doing invoice matchup. So this stuff is going to fall to the wayside for many people. It's going to pile up. Then if they're not lucky enough to have a bookkeeper, they're going to have to sort it out. And it's painful and it's silly. So the warning is there, August 31st. It's time to think, okay, let's do what's inside Clio, the native Clio payment that Clio offers. So that's the move. It makes sense to me as a software provider that you want to decrease the risk of manual entry and you want to essentially have staff and attorney hold back their time, right? That's the most
Mhm.
valuable thing we've got. So,
Yeah.
no, I'm not surprised. I think I'm more surprised at the number of conversations I keep scrolling by on various forms of social media about people that are digging their heels in and don't want to come to Clio payments. That come talk to me. I won't attack you. So no judgment zone, but I do want to understand why you wouldn't want to make the switch. That's all. I just want to understand. Right.
Yeah,
It's a
that makes a
choice.
lot of sense. One of the things that I'll say on what you said is the firms that do have a bookkeeper, what I will say is, as a accountant who does bookkeeping, I run a bookkeeping CFO firm for law firms. What I can tell you and what your bookkeeper may not be telling you is they don't want to do that manually either. And also, even if you have a bookkeeper, them doing it manually still opens you up for errors, or it opens up for things being missed or timing delays and also just inaccuracy. So I completely understand the perspective, and I'm very curious of some of those conversations for people that have heard about this coming. People who are digging in their heels, are there some common reasons or some reasons you're seeing people consistently give as to why they want to still keep collecting payments in a third party solution, even though they know it's not going to integrate with their practice management tool?
Yeah, I think there's two things that jump out at me. And maybe if we talk about it now, and maybe if somebody watches, this will be enough for them to hear it and think about it and then make a decision. So I'm going to do this calmly, even though you can already tell that I'm pretty fired up about this. Okay, pretty fired up. All right. So I think the number one reason people don't want to make the switch is it might feel like it's a mountain to climb to make the switch, or they think if they make the switch, they can do it last minute. Both of those things, not true. So that's two things in one. So just to be clear, when someone is ready to make the switch, it's probably going to take 1 to 3 business days. Business days are Monday through Friday. Okay. And let's not forget what comes after August 31st. If we don't make the switch, Labor Day is coming. That's a federal holiday, I believe. Let me know if I'm wrong. So if you miss the deadline and you're stuck doing it manually and you want to make the switch, now you're really maybe stuck a little bit more because of that federal holiday that's coming. Okay. So it does take a few days. Most people probably aren't doing the research to know that they have to give it 1 to 3 days. There is a verification process that the law firm goes through. You have to give them your tax ID, known as your EIN. You have to give them your information regarding one operating account and your trust account, known as your IOLTA. Things have to go through a quick verification process. Clio is really good about communicating where they are in the process and let you know when you're ready, but it doesn't happen like that. And we're so used to things happening like that in 2026, right? So some people I think are thinking, oh, I'll do it later, I'll do it later. And then it might be a mountain to climb. Okay. So they have a really great step-by-step process. And there is more to the conversation. So I do encourage people to research it. If you want to bring over transactions from LawPay, if there's history or something, I think Clio has a map to walk you through what are the questions you need to ask yourself in order to make sure that you have a good migration or good transition, right? And then you need time to implement. You have to know, hey, when my invoices go out now, how are they going to be? Like, how do people pay? Is it different, the same? Like, how much of a switch is it for the client? So that's the big, I don't want to switch because it's going to be different, different procedure. I got to ask questions. I got to do the research. Okay. The second thing, I think people are really married to their merchant processor fees, the percentage, and there's fear about the change. I hear you. I see you on that. I get it. This is also where you've got to have the conversation. You can chat with Clio right on Clio.com. You can call Clio and they'll talk to you about exactly what the fees are. Or if it's 11 o'clock at night and you just finished the final season of, I think, The Bear, and you decide to look at this stuff finally, you can go on Clio.com, scroll down the pricing page, and there's a section where it talks about Clio payments and it gives some example percentages. And then go see what you're paying in LawPay. Go see. And if it's still, if you guys are miles apart, which I can't believe you are, I feel like it's very competitively priced, the fees. If you're miles apart, reach out to Clio and just maybe have a conversation and see where that leads you. But those are the two big questions, I think, is worried about the merchant processor fees and how they'll be pulled out, what the difference will be, and then just like the actual physical transition of moving from one to the next.
That makes a lot of sense because I do think about that from when it comes down to changes. We live in a world where changes can happen pretty quickly for a lot. Say, for example, it's not as easy as a subscription. Hey, I just want to log in and I want to change it from here to here. But when it comes down to payments and banking, there are some verification steps involved. So there are a couple of, if you're planning to make the switch, August 31st is not the day to do it and expect it to happen immediately. And what I do think is advisable is doing it earlier if you're going to make that switch, because what you don't want to do is be caught in the middle and now clients are trying to make payments but they're not being accepted, or payments are not being processed correctly. Is that can create a nightmare of a problem. So when you talked about the steps, like how easy is it for people to see, okay, all right, here's what the steps are in the process? I know you just talked through it, but is that also on the Clio site, a easy place for them to
Yeah.
say, hey, here are the steps that are going to be required to
Mhm.
make this change?
Yeah, Clio's got a remarkable help section. And then remember, Clio's available by phone 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, and they have extended hours on the weekend. So I get it. Sometimes the weekend is all you have to finally come up for air. Okay, Clio's there for you to talk to. They also have a little chat bot in the lower right hand of your Clio screen. And it starts, I think, as AI, and then a real person hops on if you need them. So you definitely have a variety of options. The help section, though, spells out what it's like to transition and what the steps are. So it's a good idea maybe to take a look at that, digest it, and if you still have questions or just want to say, hey, I want to make sure I understand the process, call them and they'll talk to you.
Gotcha. Now, I will say this question is a little bit on, I guess you say, a little bit speculative, but I'm very curious on your thoughts on this. Is LawPay is a part of the 8 a.m. company, which also owns my case as well as some other legal technology, which my case and Clio are direct competitors. So I see with LawPay being a default that a lot of firms have used, even for other practice management tools, is from the what you've seen in the industry, do you believe that some of the other practice management tools may move in a similar direction of standing up their own payment tool if they're one of the major practice management tools?
Ooh, odd question. And I would go with yeah, because these things just make sense. You want to keep your system, you're building a system, no matter if you're my case, 8 a.m., right? Lawmatics, Clio, there's room enough in the game for everyone until there's not, right? There's enough attorneys just in the US nationwide and their own practices that seems to keep everybody in business. I think that's awesome. And I love some healthy competition, right? Competition is what makes us better. Not it's not one size fits all. So I'm sure there's pros and cons of all of these systems. I won't go down that rabbit hole right now because we'll never get out and this podcast will never end. So, okay. But I guess I'm still focused on some bad things that I see when I work with some law firms. I do ask people all the time, hey, whatever practice management system you have, are you using a payment processor that complements it? Are you using a LawPay or Clio Payments? And when people tell me, oh, I use Zelle, I'm not kidding. You're laughing. I'm thinking because you've heard these things before. I use a Zelle. I use a Venmo. I take checks that take 5 days. And I don't mean ACH, actual paper checks, right? I get worried because these are all ways for things to get lost. And it doesn't sound like we have a strong enough process and we're not respecting the systems that are needed for a law firm. If
Mm.
I go to a doctor's office, let's always compare ourselves to the great medical field. Never am I going to walk into my doctor's office, not ever. And they would say, we take Zelle or Venmo. No, it just doesn't meet my standards. for medical service of any kind, right? So you are a legal provider. You answer to the bar. You have hopefully malpractice insurance. You're having your clients hopefully sign retainer agreements. I think you owe it to your law firm to be using a payment processor that is parallel to what you're building and what you're doing and then not parallel but really integrated into that system, right? So I if you're using a practice management system, definitely I think use the processor that comes with it. It's just such a natural safeguard. They're going to put things in place to keep you from commingling. If something gets lost or you make a mistake, it's right there. You can go back to Clio if or LawPay if you have questions about chargebacks. It, but there's a plan for it. Where when you use those outside systems like Venmo and Zelle, I don't know what you're going to do in those situations. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say from an accounting standpoint, it does get a little bit more complex when you start using third-party tools or third-party options that don't actually work with your practice management tool. I think the breakdown becomes is all right, how are you going to get data from that system into your practice management tool? And part of the reason I laugh because I literally was at a meeting earlier today with a client and we were talking with a bank that they were trying to explore doing some expansion financing with. And one of the questions that were we kind of had to be preparing in this conversation was, all right, what are the ways that you collect payments? And as they were going down the list, some of them they forgot what they were using, and Zelle was one that popped up in the list. And I just remember seeing the look on the banker's face when they were going down this list because I do think it does have not only a perception with clients. I think it also has a perception when you start thinking about things like conversations with the bar association. If you're having a conversation with the bar association and you start mentioning all these different ways that you're collecting payment, for some bar associations, there is a little bit of concern that goes up because one of their big questions is going to be is how are you actually managing that? And is it being done according to the bar association's kind of like rules and ethics concerning that? So I do think when you have any system that is directly integrated, it provides a little bit more assurance and a little bit more comfort for people. So I know we could talk about this, we can go on and on about this topic, but I do want to be respectful of your time. As we wrap up, two questions. First one is on the topic of the breakup between LawPay and Clio. Are there any final thoughts that you have on that subject matter?
Well, I think it's just a natural progression. It doesn't surprise me. I think the thing that still surprises me is that there are some people that are going to spend more time being angry about it than making a decision in what they need to do for their health of their business. That's all. That's really what is important to me is how are you going to make the transition easy for your team so it doesn't slow you all down. That's that's
Awesome.
I think where we should be focused.
Nice. And then the last question is, where can people find you online or social media if they're interested in reaching out or finding out what your company is up to or asking for help on something like this?
It's a great question. I would say TikTok, but I just put my toe in the pool there. So I don't have a lot of content on TikTok. Okay. But I've got a great website called simplesmartsolo.com. You can find me there and you can find me on the socials of Instagram or Facebook also by searching for Simple Smart Solo. So
Awesome.
reach out.
Corinne, thank you so much for coming on. And
My pleasure.
to all of our listeners, thank you for listening because LawPay and Clio are breaking up from a technology standpoint, and August 31st is the deadline when that happens. So you want to make sure you are taking action to put your firm in the best position possible so you don't have issues with payments and record keeping because it could be a huge headache if you do not take action because the deadline is August 31st. You're going to see a massive change if you've been using LawPay and Clio. So let's look at our options and let's make the wise decision with our eyes wide open. So thank you for listening and thank you for joining us, Corinne.
My absolute pleasure. I enjoyed this thoroughly. I'm with you. Let's get after it. Let's not wait till August 31st.
Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Law Firm and Finance Show, where we give you great content that helps you build a more successful law firm. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on all platforms and follow us for more content.